Now recording our latest entry for the Mystic Archives, branch of the Mystica Obscura Foundation. It is 11:14 p.m. on a Saturday night, where there is a crescent moon. This marks a significant night as some specific entities are better summoned on crescent moons. Anything else I should add, Mr. Sir?
Nothing to add yet. Our last entry seemed to have a few difficulties, but we managed to get past that. The crescent moon may actually guide us in this session, if the clear vial has been set out on the windowsill.
Yes, the moon water is there, sir. I also went back into the books of obscure creatures and beings after re-listening to the past entries. Now, Entry004 has a few solutions, as we guessed, but I had forgotten about doppelgangers. So, along with skinwalkers, those same-face people can have a possibility of being a crowd of missing doppelgangers.
It's another good assumption, Apprentice Abbott. There are only a few skin-changing entities, and as for the last entry, we ended up settling on a wraith as the unseen stalker and the odd eyeless creature from the Foundation's database.
Insidious beings that stalk through the forest in the day and run rampant in the night. It's all so eerie.
The night brings many spirits forth, even without incantations.
There! Did you hear it that time?
Yes, I did. But it was only a whisper.
Only a whisper? That's something. That's proof of the paranormal, sir.
And the paranormal is all around us, Apprentice Emmett. In the ether, in the unseen air that separates mortality and the in-between. What draws them forth can be many things, or nothing. Let that be remembered. But now we must get to the entry. We cannot have this back and forth talk for far too long. The hidden shadows listen intently.
Yes, we should start. Sorry, I got carried away there. Just everything surrounding Potter's Hill is so different from what I'm used to. The atmosphere is heavy. The mist is thick.
Then let's hope that mist does not come to greet us. Begin the entry, please.
Of course, sir. Right away. Entry007 was provided by a local teenage boy very recently and will be submitted into the Obscura Mystica Foundation here in Potter's Hill, therefore pending approval by the Foundation until they hear and review it. This happened 2 nights ago at the time of this recording, so the story is still fresh in our memories, and thankfully the young man had enough to talk about and not get too scared. This story happened to one Jeremy Stockton, and I will be telling it through his point of view. This was last weekend, literally 2 days ago. I was actually too scared to tell anybody about this story. I knew my parents wouldn't believe me about the thing that I saw. The break-in was real, and everything but the cause of it was just so strange. I still have trouble believing it myself. Well, I suppose I should go back to the start before I reveal anything else. It was on a Friday night when the first traces showed up. I was alone for the weekend. My parents went out on their monthly trip together. A quick getaway for the two of them before coming back on Sunday. It's a nice routine of theirs. And I was pretty excited to have the house by myself for the weekend, to be honest. Staying up all night, playing games, blasting my own music for a change, things like that. So my parents left for the weekend, and by the time I had played some games, it was nearing sunset. I decided to watch a movie that night. Of course, I had to pick a paranormal horror one. I thought it'd be fun to watch one with the windows open. See, our house is right next to one of the largest forests in the area, so with that kind of ambience, it was really great. And, well, I do admit that I actually did have a few drinks. Not much, of course, but I did have some. Eventually, after the movie, I put another one on and ultimately fell asleep in the middle of it. It was probably around midnight or 1 a.m. when I woke up. The movie had ended and was back at the main menu when I stretched and stood up. At first, the open windows did freak me out, but I remembered I left it like that on purpose. But it's definitely something I'll never do again. When I finally regained my senses, I saw something that sent shivers up my spine. Faint fingerprints on the window. Not on the inside, as if I had slid them open or shut, but instead it was on the outside, like somebody had been watching me this whole time that I was asleep. The dark trees beyond waved crazily in the high winds that were not expected for that night. The night sky gave me no comfort as the moon's light shone on those eerie fingerprints. I slid the curtains shut immediately with my breath quickening. Panicked, I checked the front door at once. It was locked. I worriedly peered through the peephole, half expecting to see some scary face looking back at me, but nothing was there. Looking around the room, there wasn't really anything odd or out of place, until I saw a pair of scissors that was left on the coffee table next to the couch where I was lying down. At first I walked up to it without thinking, assuming that I just had to use it to open a box or something, but eventually I saw tiny strands of my hair. Small pieces of my hair. I was so freaked out and I dropped the scissors. I raced over to the nearest mirror and saw that a chunk of my hair from the backside was cut unevenly. Everything was just going from bad to worse. Well, it had gotten worse when I froze in my tracks to see that the back door was open and the kitchen floor space that it led from had fresh, wet prints. It came from outside and the footprints went upstairs, where the carpeted steps were now wet. I slammed the back door, locked it, and almost went up to check on the stairs before I turned around and grabbed a big knife. I had to defend myself somehow. Some places of the carpeted stairs were still wet from those weird footprints until I couldn't follow them anymore once I was fully upstairs. I stood still for a long moment, silent and scared. But the further I checked each room, quietly peeking in and turning on literally all the lights, the more relaxed my body was. There wasn't a single sound except my own. But holding that knife with quivering hands eventually made me more scared than an actual intruder. So I suppose my body wasn't entirely relaxed. But when all the rooms were checked, and even inside the garage, I stayed up for the rest of that night in fear, waiting for a sound or watching for any movements. The sun's light in the morning gave me a huge relief. But my parents weren't going to be home until the next day, so I had to brace myself for another long day and probably a painful night ahead. I was against calling the police that night, too. All that was there to report was an open door and wet footprints that faded really quickly, and scissors with my hair on it. Felt a little too convenient, I guess. Well, that day I spent it all inside since the doors were all shut and locked, and the windows all closed with the curtains drawn open. If there was going to be an intruder again, I might possibly see them attempt to enter. For once in a long time, I actually read a book, instead of focusing all my attention to a screen. With the book in hand, I could at least see somewhat all around me. Eventually, the dreaded sunset time arrived and I closed the curtains. No one arrived. I dared to put on the TV, but with very low volume. And the waiting was the worst at that moment, but nothing prepared me for my lack of protection when I heard a shuffling sound from above. The upstairs again. It sounded like someone was walking around slowly, almost dragging their feet or hauling something heavy. Grabbing the knife as before, I went up the stairs quietly and listened. The moment of realization made my heart drop to my stomach. The sounds were upstairs, yes, but further up. The attic. I hadn't checked the attic at all the other night. Walking over to the next hallway, I swallowed hard with absolute fear. The latch door to the attic was inched open. More sounds of the footsteps made me grasp and retreat a few steps back. The feet paused at my reaction. There was a long silence before they marched on again. I could have sworn that I heard some weird gurgling sound too, like something was caught in someone's throat. Eventually, I got the courage to carefully lean down the ladder of the attic, all the while listening to heavy breathing in that dark space. But when I began to climb up the ladder, I saw a faint light up there. Hesitating, I finally peered up into the attic, and what I saw there, I will never forget. It's just too abnormal to believe in. From the farthest corner of the attic space, there was, well, what I guessed to be a pale man with long, stringy black hair. He was hunched over with his back turned against me. Red candles were set all around him in random patterns, even in stacks, but as I looked closer, specific candles were set in a circular pattern. These candles were black and were taller than the others. Beneath the circular set candles were lines of white chalk, where the man was hunched over in the center of it. And I know I sound really crazy when I say this, but I thought I saw another figure, but it was made of black mist, standing above the man, as if it were coming out of the floorboard itself. It made no sound. It only hovered above him and watched him silently. I thought by now the man would know I was there, or perhaps he already did and didn't care if I was present or not. He began to eat something that I couldn't see, but his arms, from what I could see, were bent like he was holding something in front of him, and he began making a loud devouring sound. I nearly backed away when he slightly turned his head to the side. I couldn't see his eyes, but I knew he was aware of me. Almost deliberately, he took something small in his crooked fingers. I squinted my eyes and began to panic as my heart rate skyrocketed. It was the chunk of hair that I was missing. With wide eyes, I watched him take the hair and slowly, very gradually, ate that too. Thin strands of hair mixed with the strange substance he was eating. At that point, I had enough. I couldn't let this deranged man capture me or for that odd, misty figure to study me. I was scared out of my mind. The man went back on being hunched over and making loud munching sounds while I slid down the ladder and ran to get out of the house. Each room made me feel like that man was just crawling around in the corner or that misty figure would pop out unexpectedly. Nothing happened, fortunately, and in the middle of the night, I had to run over to my neighbor's house. With a panicked expression and me stumbling over a lot of words, the neighbors called the police to report a break-in. I spent the night retelling my story to them and saw in their face the regret for calling the police. They thought I was crazy. Probably should have left out the dark, misty figure. That was when they didn't believe me. Well, the police did eventually arrive, and to the neighbor's surprise, the police did find the candles and chalk left over in the attic space. After I told them where to look specifically, any traces of the man, though, couldn't be found. Just the items left in the attic. I remember the man only wore some sort of cloth as his pants. He didn't wear any shirt, and I could see his thin body with his bones and his spine nearly poking through. It was a horrific sight. When my parents got home, they initially didn't believe me either, but after speaking with the police about the matter, they were worried and checked the attic themselves. They found burn marks where the candles were, and the chalk was stained, but my dad had said that he knew immediately that it was some kind of dark ritual. Esoteric symbols were etched into the wood in between the chalk lines and left in the candle wax from the tall black candles. It was such a horrific event, and I'm still traumatized by it. Like most people who don't really believe in the paranormal stuff, my parents told me to stay away from spiritual matters like rituals and summoning. Well, I had to get my story out to someone who would listen, and that's where I found out about you two. I heard of a duo investigating strange events around Potter's Hill, and, I think it's been happening a lot recently, and I'm beginning to worry. I think the whole town is paranoid now. Something isn't right.
A much darker story than I assumed it would be. This ritual that the man was performing was not just one of conjuration, but connecting with malevolent fields of the beyond. He has torn through the veil. This is bad news.
Torn the... You mean the veil into the beyond can be torn from the in-between?
Not entirely. But if a willing soul from the mortal plane goes through the dark rituals and sacrifices their body for evil spirits to invade, then yes, the veil can be torn through, and only with mortal assistance.
Then we need to pursue this teenager further, along with the location of this ritual. It'll be a step closer to find the source of darkness around Potter's Hill. This is actually a huge lead for us.
It is indeed. Pack your things for necessary involvement of the spiritual field, and if things go south of potential possession. We are going at once.
Oh, right. Do I...